Lisa noticed her for the first time on Monday morning while pouring coffee for the early shift workers at the space station cafe that orbited between Mars and Jupiter, where thousands of humans lived and worked in the mining operations that kept Earth supplied with rare minerals. The woman stood out immediately with her tall, slender frame and skin that had a faint blue shimmer like moonlight on water, and her eyes were the deepest purple Lisa had ever seen, almost like looking into another dimension entirely, which made her hand shake slightly as she handed change to a customer. Throughout her shift, Lisa kept glancing at the mysterious woman who sat alone at a corner table, nursing the same cup of tea for 3 hours, while her gaze followed Lisa's every movement around the cafe, making the young woman feel both nervous and strangely excited. When Lisa's shift ended, she walked through the station's main corridor toward her small apartment in Section 7, but she could feel those purple eyes on her back, and when she turned around, the alien woman was there about 50 feet behind her, moving with a grace that seemed impossible. The next morning, the woman was back at the same table wearing different clothes that looked like they were made from liquid metal that shifted and flowed with her movements, and again she watched Lisa work without ordering anything, except that single cup of tea. Lisa tried to focus on her job, but found herself stealing glances at the beautiful stranger whose presence filled the cafe with an energy that made the air feel electric, and several customers commented that the coffee tasted better than usual, though Lisa knew she had made it the same way she always did, during her lunch break. Lisa sat with her friend Kate, who worked in the communications center, and described the strange woman who had been watching her for 2 days now, and Kate's face went pale as she explained that blue-skinned aliens were from the Andromedan system and were known to be powerful telepaths. This information made Lisa both more curious and more worried, because she wondered what an Andromedan could want with a simple cafe worker who had no special skills or knowledge that would interest an advanced alien species from another galaxy on. The third day, Lisa decided to confront the situation directly, and during a quiet moment in the cafe, she walked over to the alien woman's table and sat down across from her, feeling her heart pound so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The alien woman smiled, and her voice was like music when she spoke, saying her name was Zara, and she had traveled across half the universe to find Lisa specifically, which made no sense at all to the confused human who had never done anything remarkable in her 25 years of life. Zara explained that her people had technology that could scan across dimensions and timelines to find specific individuals who possessed rare qualities that most beings never developed, and Lisa had something that only appeared once in every billion souls across the universe. Lisa laughed nervously and said there must be some mistake, because she was just an ordinary person who served coffee and lived in a tiny apartment and had never even finished college, but Zara shook her head and pulled out a small device that projected a hologram between them. The hologram showed moments from Lisa's life that she had forgotten, like when she was 7 and shared her lunch with a stray cat every day for a month, or when she was 15 and stayed up all night to talk a classmate out of making a terrible decision. It showed her at 19 working extra shifts to help pay for her younger brother's medical treatment, and at 22 giving blood every week for 6 months to help a stranger she had never met, who needed regular transfusions to survive. Zara pointed to each memory and explained that these were not just acts of kindness, but demonstrations of a rare form of energy that her people called the light of connection, which was the ability to form bonds with others that transcended normal emotional attachments. This energy was so rare that most civilizations never produced even one being who possessed it, and those who did were considered sacred throughout the galaxy because they could heal rifts between species and create understanding where only conflict had existed. Before Lisa felt overwhelmed and asked why Zara had been following her instead of just approaching her directly, and the alien woman's expression became sad as she admitted that her people were dying, and she had been afraid Lisa would refuse to help if she knew the truth. The disease affecting Zara's species was not physical but spiritual, and it was spreading through their collective consciousness like a virus that destroyed their ability to connect with each other, leaving them isolated in their own minds, even when surrounded by their loved ones. Their greatest scientists and healers had tried everything, but nothing could stop the spread of this emotional plague that was turning their entire civilization into empty shells that could think and move but could no longer feel or love or hope. Lisa reached across the table and took Zara's hand, which felt cool and smooth like polished stone, but pulsed with a warmth that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside, and she felt a connection form between them that was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Through that connection, Lisa could feel the desperation and fear that Zara carried, and also the hope that had brought her across the vast darkness of space to find one human who might hold the key to saving millions of lives without hesitation. Lisa said she would help in any way she could, even though she had no idea what that might mean or what would be required of her, because she could feel through their joined hands that this was real and urgent and more important than anything else. Zara's eyes filled with tears that looked like liquid diamonds, and she squeezed Lisa's hand while explaining that they would need to leave immediately for her home world, where the situation was growing worse every day, and thousands were already lost to the emptiness. Lisa thought about her job and her apartment and her life on the station, but all of that seemed small compared to the chance to save an entire species. And she made the decision that would change everything by saying yes without knowing what challenges lay ahead. The ship that Zara led Lisa to was hidden in a cargo bay that supposedly held mining equipment, but when they stepped inside, Lisa gasped at the beauty of the interior, which looked like it was carved from a single piece of crystal that hummed with a soft melody. Zara moved her hands over panels that responded to her touch with waves of color, and the ship lifted off so smoothly that Lisa did not even feel movement until she looked through a window that showed the space station growing smaller behind them as they traveled through space faster than Lisa thought possible. Zara explained more about her people and how they had evolved to share a collective emotional field that allowed them to experience each other's feelings, which had made them a peaceful species for millions of years. But this same gift had become their curse when the disease appeared, because it spread through their emotional connections like fire through dry grass, and the only way to slow it was to cut themselves off from each other, which was worse than death for beings who had never been alone. Lisa asked how she could possibly help when she was just one human, with no special training or knowledge. But Zara showed her recordings of her people trying to study the light of connection that Lisa possessed and failing to understand its source. The journey took 3 days, during which Zara taught Lisa basic words in her language and showed her images of her world, which had cities that floated in the clouds and oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life, and forests where the trees sang in harmony. Lisa learned that Zara was not just any member of her species, but was actually what they called a seeker, whose job was to search the universe for solutions to problems that threatened their civilization, and she had been searching for someone like Lisa for 50 years. When they finally arrived at Zara's planet, Lisa saw that the situation was worse than she had imagined, because the cities that should have been full of life and color were dim and silent, with beings moving through the streets like ghosts. Zara took her to a medical facility where hundreds of her people lay in beds staring at nothing with their purple eyes empty of the spark that should have been there, and Lisa felt tears run down her face at the sight of so much suffering. The healers who met them were skeptical that a human could help, but they were desperate enough to try anything, and they led Lisa to a room where she could meet with patients one at a time to see if her presence made any difference. The first patient was a young child who had been among the first affected and had not spoken or responded to anyone in months. But when Lisa sat beside the bed and took the child's small blue hand, something extraordinary happened. Lisa felt her own emotions flow through the connection like warm honey, and suddenly the child's eyes focused on her face, and a tiny smile appeared which caused every healer in the room to gasp, because it was the first emotional response they had seen from any patient. Word spread quickly through the facility, and soon Lisa was surrounded by desperate family members, begging her to help their loved ones. But she could only work with one person at a time, and each connection left her exhausted, as if she was giving away pieces of herself. By the end of the first day, Lisa had helped 12 patients show signs of improvement, but there were millions suffering across the planet, and she knew that even if she worked every moment without rest, she could never reach them all in time. That night, Zara held Lisa as she cried from frustration and exhaustion, and told her that what she had already done was miraculous. But Lisa knew there had to be a better way than touching each person individually, until she collapsed from the strain. The next morning, Lisa met with the planet's leading scientists and asked them to scan her while she made connections with patients, to see if they could understand and replicate what was happening on a biological and energy level. The scans revealed that when Lisa formed emotional connections, she produced a unique frequency of neural energy that somehow reset the damaged pathways in the patient's brains, allowing them to feel again. But the scientists could not figure out how to reproduce this frequency artificially. Lisa suggested something that sounded crazy even to her, which was to use their own technology for sharing emotions to amplify her ability and broadcast it across the entire planet at once, though no one knew if this was possible or if it might harm Lisa. The scientists worked for 2 days to modify their emotional broadcasting system while Lisa practiced, with smaller groups learning to extend her connection to multiple people at once, which was like trying to hug everyone in a room simultaneously. Zara stayed by Lisa's side the entire time, and their bond grew stronger, until Lisa could feel Zara's emotions as clearly as her own, which helped her understand how devastating this disease was for beings who had never experienced emotional isolation before. Finally, the modified broadcasting system was ready, and Lisa was connected to transmitters that would carry her emotional frequency to every corner of the planet. But the scientists warned that channeling that much energy through one person had never been attempted. Lisa looked at the thousands of empty faces in the medical facility and the millions more she could see on screens connected to other facilities across the planet, and she knew she had to try regardless of the risk to herself. She sat in the center of a circular platform surrounded by crystalline transmitters that began to glow as the system powered up, and Zara squeezed her hand one last time before stepping back to let the process begin. Lisa closed her eyes and opened her heart, letting every feeling she had ever experienced flow outward like a river of light. And love and hope and joy all mixed together in a wave that the transmitters caught and amplified. The strain was incredible, and Lisa felt like she was being stretched across the entire planet. But she held on, thinking about the child who had smiled, and Zara who had traveled so far to find her, and all the beings who deserved to feel again. The broadcast lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like hours to Lisa, who collapsed when it ended with every cell in her body aching. But before she lost consciousness, she heard something that made it all worthwhile. Across the planet, millions of voices rose in joy as families reconnected and felt each other's love again, and the healing spread through their collective consciousness stronger than the disease had ever been, until the darkness was completely driven away. Lisa woke up 3 days later in a room filled with soft blue light and the sound of that strange music she had heard on Zara's ship. But now she understood it was not music, but the sound of emotions moving through the air like invisible butterflies. Zara was there beside her bed, and her purple eyes were bright with tears of relief as she explained that Lisa had saved not just the sick, but had actually made their entire species stronger by showing them a new way to connect that did not depend on their natural gift alone. The healers came to examine Lisa and found that the broadcast had changed her too, because now she could feel the emotions of everyone around her without touching them, which was overwhelming at first, like being in a room where everyone was talking at once. But Zara helped her learn to control this new ability by teaching her the meditation techniques her people used to filter the emotional noise. And soon Lisa could choose when to open herself to others and when to maintain her boundaries. Over the next week, thousands of Zara's people came to thank Lisa, and each one brought a small gift, which was their tradition for showing gratitude. And soon her room was filled with crystals that sang and flowers that changed color and books that projected stories into the air. The Planetary Council met with Lisa and offered her anything she wanted as payment for saving their civilization. But Lisa said she had not done it for reward, and only asked that they share their medical knowledge with humanity to help sick people on Earth. They agreed immediately and also offered to make Lisa an honorary citizen of their world, with a home there whenever she wanted to visit, which made her cry, because she had never felt so accepted and valued in her entire life. But Lisa knew she needed to return to her own life, even though leaving Zara and this beautiful world would be painful. So she began preparing for the journey home while trying to memorize every moment of her remaining time there. Zara surprised her by announcing that she had requested permission to return to the space station with Lisa as an official ambassador to humanity, which would allow them to stay together while building bridges between their two species. The council approved immediately because they knew their debt to humanity through Lisa could never be fully repaid, and having Zara serve as ambassador was the least they could do to strengthen the friendship between their worlds. Before leaving, Zara's people performed a ceremony where they officially named Lisa as a healer of souls, which was the highest honor they could give to someone not born of their world, and the title would be recorded in their history forever. The journey back to the space station felt different because now Lisa was not just a cafe worker, but someone who had changed the fate of an entire civilization, and Zara was not just an alien stranger, but had become the most important person in her life. When they arrived at the station, the authorities were shocked to see Lisa return with an alien ambassador. But Zara presented official documents that established her diplomatic status and requested quarters near where Lisa lived and worked. News of what Lisa had done spread quickly through human space, and suddenly everyone wanted to meet the woman who had proven that humans could contribute something unique and valuable to the galactic community beyond technology or resources. Scientists came to study Lisa's abilities and discovered that 1 in every 100,000 humans had the potential for the light of connection. But most never developed it because Earth society did not value emotional connections the way other species did. This led to new programs in schools teaching children about empathy and emotional intelligence, and within a generation, humans began developing abilities that had been dormant in their species for thousands of years. Lisa returned to work at the cafe, but everything was different, because now aliens from many worlds came specifically to meet her, and the cafe became an unofficial embassy where species met and shared their cultures over coffee and conversation. Zara worked to establish formal relations between her people and Earth while also studying human culture, and she found their chaotic emotional nature fascinating compared to her own people's structured way of sharing feelings. Together, Lisa and Zara wrote a book about their experience, which became required reading at the Diplomatic Academy and inspired a new generation of humans to see themselves as healers and bridge builders rather than conquerors. A year later, Zara's people sent a medical ship with advanced healing technology as promised, and millions of humans with conditions that Earth medicine could not cure were healed using techniques that worked on emotional and spiritual levels. Lisa and Zara grew closer as they worked together, and their bond became something neither species had seen before because it combined human passion with Andromedan depth, creating a connection that transcended the limitations of either race. Other humans with the light of connection were found and trained, and soon there was a core of emotional healers who traveled the galaxy, helping species deal with conflicts and traumas that traditional methods could not resolve. The space station where Lisa worked became a center for interspecies cooperation, and the little cafe where it all started was preserved as a monument to the power of simple human kindness to change the universe. Years passed and Lisa aged as humans do, while Zara remained unchanged because her species lived for centuries, but their bond only grew stronger as they faced each challenge together and built a future neither had imagined. When Lisa was old and her hair had turned silver like Zara's, she looked back on that day when she first saw purple eyes watching her and realized that being stalked by an alien was the best thing that had ever happened to her. The universe had learned something important from their story, which was that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward to save civilizations, and that love between different species was not only possible, but could be the foundation for peace. Zara stayed with Lisa until her final day, holding her hand as she had that first time in the cafe, and promising that Lisa's legacy would live forever in the hearts of every being she had healed with her gift. After Lisa passed away, her story became legend throughout the galaxy, and human children grew up knowing that their species had something special to offer, which was not weapons or technology, but the simple ability to care for strangers. The cafe on the space station became a shrine where beings from across the universe came to remember the human woman who had proven that empathy was the most powerful force in existence, and that connection between souls transcended all boundaries, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Zara carried Lisa's memory like a flame that would never die, knowing that their love had changed not just 2 lives, but the destiny of countless worlds forever. In the days after Lisa's funeral, Zara stood in the empty cafe, unable to accept that the woman who had changed everything was really gone, and she touched the counter where Lisa used to stand, feeling only cold metal instead of warm presence. The space station authorities wanted to close the cafe and turn it into a proper memorial. But Zara fought them, saying Lisa would have wanted it to keep serving people because that was who she was at heart, always giving, rather than taking. Kate, who had been Lisa's friend, agreed to manage the cafe and keep it running, while Zara dealt with her grief. And the endless stream of visitors who came to pay respects to the human who had saved millions. Zara found herself telling Lisa's story over and over to beings from different worlds, and each time she told it, she noticed something new about their journey together that she had not understood while living it. A month after Lisa died, something strange began happening to Zara that she could not explain to anyone, because it seemed impossible even by her own species' understanding of emotional science and consciousness. She started having dreams where Lisa was still alive, and they were having conversations about things they had never discussed, and when she woke up she could still feel Lisa's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. At first Zara thought grief was affecting her mind, but then she realized these were not dreams but actual communications, because Lisa would tell her things that turned out to be true, like where to find her hidden journal. The journal contained notes Lisa had written during her final days, including detailed instructions about how to teach other humans to develop the light of connection and warnings about dangers she had sensed but not fully understood. Zara shared these writings with Earth scientists who used them to create training programs, and within a year the first Academy for Emotional Healers opened with Zara as its founding director. Students came from Earth and other human colonies to learn how to open their hearts the way Lisa had, and though none were as naturally gifted as she had been, many showed remarkable ability with proper training. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of Lisa's healing continued to spread as Zara's people shared their restored emotional connections with other species, creating a network of empathy that had never existed before. Trade agreements that had been stalled for centuries were suddenly resolved as negotiators could feel each other's true intentions, and wars ended when soldiers realized their enemies felt the same fear and love they did. But Zara noticed something troubling in the reports from various worlds, which was that some beings seemed resistant to these new connections and actively worked to maintain the old barriers between species. These resistors formed small groups that spread fear about emotional contamination and claimed that species should remain separate to preserve their unique identities, but Zara sensed something darker behind their words. 6 months after Lisa's death, Zara felt a powerful surge of emotion that nearly knocked her unconscious, and when she recovered, she found herself changed in a way she could not immediately understand. She looked in the mirror and saw that her purple eyes now had flecks of brown like Lisa's had been, and when she touched objects Lisa had used, she could see memories of their time together playing, like videos in her mind. The Andromedan healers examined her and discovered that Lisa's emotional pattern had somehow merged with Zara's, creating something unprecedented in their species' history, which was a true fusion of two consciousness from different species. This should have been impossible, but the healers theorized that Lisa's unique gift combined with the depth of their bond had allowed part of her to survive within Zara's emotional field after her physical death. Zara struggled with this revelation because she did not know if she was still herself or had become something new. But over time, she learned to integrate Lisa's presence and found strength in carrying part of her beloved within herself. A year passed and Zara noticed she was developing abilities she had never had before, like being able to sense human emotions more clearly than any Andromedan ever could, and understanding human behavior in ways that helped her teaching. She also began to feel something growing within her emotional field that was neither fully her nor fully Lisa, but something entirely new that pulsed with its own unique energy signature. The healers monitored this development with fascination and concern because nothing like it had ever been documented, but Zara felt no fear, only a strange sense of anticipation as if something important was about to happen. 2 years after Lisa's death, Zara was teaching a class at the academy when she collapsed, and the students rushed to help her, but she waved them back, saying she needed to be alone for what was about to occur. In her quarters, Zara felt the energy within her reach a critical point, and suddenly there was a flash of light, and standing before her was a young girl who looked both human and Andromedan. The girl had Zara's blue skin but Lisa's facial features and purple eyes with brown flecks. and she looked at Zara with recognition and said she knew who she was and why she had been born. Zara named her Luna, after Earth's moon that she and Lisa used to watch together. And though Luna was not born in any conventional sense, she was real and alive, and carried the gifts of both her mothers. Luna grew quickly not in body but in understanding, and by the time she looked like a teenager, she had absorbed all of Lisa's memories from Zara and developed her own unique perspective on the universe. She could see things that others could not like, threads of emotion connecting all living beings and dark spots, where those connections were weak or broken, and she knew her purpose was to strengthen the web Lisa had started weaving. Zara raised Luna, while continuing to teach at the academy, and together they expanded the programs to include beings from other species who showed potential for emotional healing regardless of their origin. 5 years after Lisa's death, the galaxy was transforming in ways no one had predicted, as the barriers between species continued to fall and new alliances formed, based on emotional understanding rather than political necessity. But Luna began having troubling visions of a darkness gathering strength in the places where connections had been severed. And she tried to warn others, but most thought she was too young to understand such things. 10 years passed, and the cafe where it all began had become a pilgrimage site. While the academy had graduated thousands of healers who spread across the galaxy, continuing Lisa's work in ways she never could have imagined. Zara aged more slowly than humans but faster than normal Andromedans, due to the changes within her, and she spent her time documenting everything she had learned about emotional connection for future generations. Luna grew into her abilities and began traveling to worlds where the emotional connections were weakest, trying to understand why some beings resisted the unity that Lisa had offered freely to all. 15 years after Lisa's death, the galaxy seemed more connected than ever, but Luna's visions grew darker and more urgent, though she still could not make others understand the danger she felt. Approaching Zara believed her daughter but did not know how to fight an enemy they could not see or define, and she wished Lisa was there to guide them through this new challenge that threatened everything they had built together. 20 years after Lisa's death, a young woman named Emma worked at the same cafe that had become a shrine to humanity's first great healer, and she often wondered what it must have been like when Lisa served coffee here before everything changed. Emma had the light of connection like many humans did now, but she felt hers was weak compared to the stories of Lisa, who could heal entire planets with her gift, and she sometimes felt unworthy to work in such a sacred place. One morning, Emma noticed a young alien girl sitting alone in the corner crying silent tears that sparkled like starlight, and something about her seemed familiar, though Emma was sure they had never met before in her life. The girl had blue skin and purple eyes just like the Andromedans, but there was something different about her features that suggested she was not fully of that species. And when Emma approached to offer comfort, the girl looked up with recognition. She introduced herself as Luna and said she was the daughter of Zara, and that her mother had told her stories about this cafe and about Lisa every night before sleep, until the words became part of her dreams. Emma was shocked, because no one had ever heard of a hybrid between humans and Andromedans, and she did not even know such a thing was possible. But Luna explained that she was not biological, but rather created from the merged emotional patterns of Lisa and Zara. During their years together, Lisa and Zara's bond had become so deep that when Lisa died, a part of her consciousness had remained within Zara's emotional field, and over time, this fragment had grown into something new and separate. Luna was essentially the child of their love made real through Andromedan technology that could give form to strong emotional imprints, and she carried within her the memories and gifts of both her mothers, though she was her own unique being. But Luna had come to the cafe for help, because she was experiencing something that frightened her, which was visions of a darkness spreading across the galaxy that threatened to destroy all the connections between species that Lisa had helped create. In her visions, she saw the emotional bridges between worlds breaking and species retreating into isolation and fear, while a shadow grew stronger by feeding on the disconnection and mistrust between different races. Emma felt a chill run through her as she realized these were not just dreams, but warnings of something real, and she asked Luna if she had told anyone else about these visions, but the girl shook her head. Luna explained that she had tried to warn the Andromedan Council, but they thought she was having delusions caused by her unique origin, and even Zara, who loved her, deeply could not see the danger that Luna felt growing stronger every day. Emma knew she had to help, and she suggested they visit the memorial center where Lisa's personal items and records were kept, because maybe there would be clues about how to face this new threat. At the memorial, they found Lisa's old journal where she had written about her experiences, and Emma noticed passages about dark moments during the healing, when she felt something pushing back against her light. Lisa had written that saving Zara's people had not destroyed the emotional plague, but had pushed it somewhere else, like squeezing water from a sponge only to have it puddle elsewhere, waiting for another chance to spread. Luna's eyes widened as she read these words, because they matched what she saw in her visions, and she realized that the plague had not died but had evolved, and learned from its defeat 20 years ago. They discovered that Lisa had left notes about a theory that the plague was not a disease, but a living consciousness that fed on isolation, and that it had existed since the beginning of sentient thought, moving from species to species. The only way to truly defeat it was not to push it away, but to transform it by showing it another way to exist, which Lisa had started to understand near the end of her life but had not lived long enough to complete. Emma and Luna knew they needed help. So they gathered the other humans with the light of connection, who worked at various diplomatic posts throughout human space and shared what they had discovered. Many were skeptical at first, but when Luna shared her visions directly through emotional connection, they felt the truth of the danger and agreed that something had to be done before the shadow grew too strong. They decided to seek out Zara, who was now an elder ambassador living on Earth, where she taught young diplomats about emotional connection and interspecies understanding. At the academy, Lisa had inspired when Zara saw Luna and Emma together. She immediately understood that something important was happening, because she could feel Lisa's presence in both of them, like an echo of the woman she had loved. Emma and Luna explained everything and showed Zara the journal entries, and slowly the older alien's expression changed from skepticism to recognition, and then to fear, as she realized the plague had indeed survived. Zara revealed that she had felt something wrong in the emotional fields between worlds for months, but had thought it was her own grief affecting her perception, and she had not wanted to cause panic without proof. Now, with Luna's visions and Lisa's journal as evidence, Zara knew they had to act quickly, and she used her influence to call an emergency meeting of all species that had been touched by Lisa's healing. Representatives from 50 worlds gathered at the space station, and Luna stood before them sharing her visions, while Emma and the other human healers created emotional connections, so everyone could feel the truth directly. At first there was denial and fear, but then an old Andromedan healer who had been there when Lisa saved their world stood up and said they could not let Lisa's sacrifice be in vain by ignoring this threat. The assembly agreed to work together, and they began planning how to face the shadow that threatened everything Lisa had built, while Luna and Emma felt the weight of continuing a legacy that had started with one woman serving coffee. They did not know if they were strong enough to face what was coming, but they knew they had to try, because Lisa had shown them that even ordinary people could save worlds if they opened their hearts wide enough. The shadow was growing stronger, and soon it would make its move, but now it faced something it had not expected, which was a united galaxy ready to fight for connection rather than surrender to isolation.